Hi, I'm Leah Kyaio, and I am an out boss.
Hello, out bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 42 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. On today's show, I am super excited to have Leah Kyaio join us all the way from Seattle, Washington. We are recording live in Las Vegas, Nevada at the NGLCC conference. It's very hot here, so it's hard to kind of keep things going. But Leah, thank you so much for being on the show. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you, Rhodes. I really appreciate being here as well.
Excellent. So are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
I am so ready.
Love it. Okay, so a little bit about Leah. Leah has been in the diversity field for over 25 years. Her current business, With Respect, provides tools and strategies to individuals and organizations to reduce and eliminate racism and sexism. As a solutions-based individual, Leah brings a lot of passion to changing the conversation and allowing people to change their minds through learning, expansion, and new perspectives. We need more of that in our lives right now. So thank you for the work that you're doing. So to kick us off, just tell us a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique.
So we do a lot of professional and organizational development around eliminating racism and sexism. And I'm really excited about our new leg of Train the Trainers, which is not content specific. It's about how do we design training to increase our ROI. Most professional development is at 12%. We can take it to about 43% of an ROI. So that's really exciting because the professional development industry, particularly around diversity, has historically not had the impact that we need it to have. We've been doing it for 40 years, and we have not progressed much past awareness. Not that there aren't great trainers out there, but the content needs to be expanded. So I'm really excited about the opportunities that that's presenting and the people that can go forth and change the world. So it isn't just the Leah show anymore. So I'm really excited about that.
I love it. I think that adding that quality control or adding quality to the field, the diversity and inclusion field, is huge. It's long overdue. And I think people are being more sophisticated now than ever before on how to kind of take the brain science and match that with training techniques and adult learning. So there's a lot that you're doing right now. You shared a number of really amazing opportunities before we hit record. And I'm curious right now, what has you most inspired about your business?
Besides the training of trainers, I just finished and published the book that the Train the Trainers is based off of, which is Mind Scaffolding, The Art of Changing Their Mind. And it's the opportunity to be able to expand our conversations and how we can take people from effectively 0 to 60, where their mind shift is just a soft yes. And what's the blueprint to do that? It's based on adult learning theory. It's based on what we know about brain development. All of the science is there. And in addition to that, it's what I've done over the last 20, 25 years. So it's really, really exciting, particularly because it's not work that's being done right now. And I'd like that to change. The other real big thing in my world is the Loving Me series, which is the personal development component, because everything starts with me. And until I know who I am, can stand in myself, in my self-worth and in my self-respect, everything else in my behavior is a reflection out. So when we remember that, the Loving Me series is a free email series that drops an email into your inbox on a weekly basis that provides you with the skills and tools to continue and move you forward in your own personal development. And like I said, it's a free service. It's kind of my contribution to raising the common consciousness.
I love that. I love that you're so giving in your business that you're providing this free content every week. So for our listeners, if this is something that sounds of interest, which I think applies to all of us, you should definitely check that out. So Leah, when I am interviewing guests, I normally ask this question because I'm really fascinated with your journey in starting your business. So usually when I talk with guests, they start out for one of two reasons. And the first is that they had this amazing purpose, they had this drive, they knew they wanted to make a huge dent in the universe, and that's what got them started. And the second is that they were working for someone else, they were working on someone else's dreams, and they realized, they had an epiphany that they no longer wanted to do that. They no longer wanted to try to fit themselves into a workplace culture that didn't really value who they were, or they had to cover some aspects of who they are. And so I'm curious, there's maybe a little bit of both. Which one resonates more with you and why?
So I need a t-shirt that says does not work well for others because What I have discovered is that because I have a solution brain, I can see where things aren't quite right and how, based on the mission of an organization, we could just tweak it a little bit and it could be so much better. And ironically, the systems are not interested in change. Or not so ironically, I suppose. So that's really kind of where I hit my head. And I will say that as an out entrepreneur now, it's not always been that easy. I came in through the education venue, so to speak. I learned about being oppressed and became an anti-oppression trainer very early on, translated that into a teaching career, and discovered that who I was as a lesbian mom wasn't okay. And I had to keep my mouth shut, and I couldn't talk about my other life, and met with a lot of resistance in raising my children. What that really reinforced was all of the other racist, sexist experiences that I had witnessed coming through life. I grew up as an inner city thug, so I had an opportunity to see a world that was very different. And it had to change. And I am a change agent, and I know that. So having to find a way to do that and support my family has been an interesting journey, not always lucrative.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really interesting point around being a teacher, an educator, and knowing that you couldn't be out on the job for a variety of reasons. And still in a number of states, I know in Tennessee, back in my days when I was an advocate, there are legislators trying to pass, a don't say gay law, effectively, basically a gag order for teachers not to be able to bring their whole selves to work, not to be able to talk about their families, not to be able to normalize, like, hey, I have a wife and I have kids, and like many people in this country. And so that still is happening now. And kind of remembering that experience of being an educator and the culture that you were in, what's one thing that you do in your business right now to kind of to just totally hack what you had experienced back as an educator, saying, I experienced this in my school, and when I start my business, I am no longer going to embrace that kind of culture. So what do you do when you're working with contractors or with your staff? How are you making that a more inclusive business?
One of the tools that we offer is called Value Questions Protocol. And it's the art of being able to softly move people into the language and without offense. One of the experiences, as you were talking, that I was reminded of was one of my oldest children in their high school class. And these are, they're late 20 kids. So 10 years ago, where there was an English assignment, first assignment into school. Tell us about your family life. And you can't use the word gay. You cannot talk about, and he stood up in his class and said, so who am I supposed to talk about? And that recognition of how our own biases box us in. So the Value Question Protocol really approaches that by helping us to answer 7 primary questions. And I'm not going to be able to rattle them off the top of my head. But the idea of how do we change the conversation? How do we encourage people to embrace things in a way that they can step outside their comfort zone? We don't learn when we're in a comfort zone, right? Learning happens when we stretch. So how do we stretch people without overstretching them and look at the opportunities that we have to be able to meet people where they are and take them with us? The other big thing that I find is I am one of them. People talk about those people, and having the opportunity in every conversation to be able to say, I am those people. And meeting with some resistance, no, you're not. It's like, hello. Mm-hmm. And so recognizing that opportunity to really be able to put a face to things people have not had an opportunity to have a face to before. And empowering our youth. In the Seattle area in particular, we have a very strong movement around gender fluidity and finding your spectrum, so to speak. And so educators are coming looking for tools to be able to address that and opening those doors and saying, come with all your quote unquote stupid questions, because this is a safe place to do that. So those are the things that I do in my business now to help people. The one piece that I haven't learned how to address is the willingness. So willingness is 85% of the work. But you can't convince people to be willing. You can't mandate will. You have to find that mechanism of willingness. And what I find is that most people, it's coming through a window of personal experience. And they have more opportunity because more of us are out and more of our children are pushing those lines and asking those questions. So I think that that's what I can do in the business that I do, is help to answer those questions, help to frame things back to what people already know so that they can move forward and learn more.
And you're bringing that into your business, right? Like you're using those same kind of techniques that you're training on for your audiences. You're embracing that as a business for the people that you work with.
Exactly.
Okay. So I want to shift just a bit and talk more about what brings you to the Rainbow family, so your LGBT identity. And specifically, I want to know if you can recall a time where you can share when it was really challenging for you to be an out boss. So this is as a business owner. So post kind of education as a teacher, like now you are the business owner. You're creating the business of your dreams and you're trying to bring on clients. So just thinking about a time where maybe you were afraid of being completely out about who you are because you were afraid of losing that client, or maybe you felt unsafe. Can you think of something specific, and how did you work around that?
So one of my clients current clients is the Navy. And the Navy is an interesting dichotomy where we have willingness and not so much, and it all shows up in the room. And I can honestly say that, so the first conversation was with the organizer, where the challenge became, so we're concerned about you talking about white privilege and how that might offend. Well, white privilege is easy compared to LGBT issues, right? So that trips that first red flag. Then when you walk in the room and you've got these, you can't tell people, right? Because they're all in uniform. So you have no read on who's where and how, and that level of not 100% sure about how safe I am, and I'm on their turf. So those kinds of issues that show up, and that's not an isolated experience. I also work in law enforcement, and I've had that experience as well when you walk into a room full of uniformed men, largely, and you're not sure where they stand and how out you can be. At the same time, I work around anti-racism and sexism, right, which are just two of the isms, and you can't really approach just one ism, right? You get the full cage. So having the opportunity then to start softly, right, and check your ground to see how safe it is before you mention, oh, by the way, I have a wife. It's easy to start with, I have kids. Not always easy to throw in the wife part. So that's the challenge that I find in those largely patriarchal systems that have historically not been welcoming and not real clear about the lay of the land when you walk into a room.
And in those environments, did you have a moment where you felt unsafe and you were able to work around? Did your audience ever surprise you when you kind of gauged, all right, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to just talk about my wife here and I'm going to hold that space? Were you ever surprised by reactions?
It was actually in a course that I did for a local community college. And I didn't think twice about saying the fact that I have a wife. And I had a gentleman who said in one of the offline, right, he comes to me and he says, I'm Catholic and I don't really believe in gay marriage but I really like you. And that whole sentence, you're like, really?
Like, how do I unpack this?
Yeah. And we were in the situation where we had already introduced tools. So I could roll back to, right, respect isn't about liking people. It's not about agreeing with people. It's not even about knowing people. It's about civility. It's about playing nice in the sandbox just because we're all in the same sandbox. You're not going to pee in your sandbox. Being able to have that conversation of, I really appreciate your candor, and here's my recommendation around how you might frame that, remembering that respect, and you have been very respectful, standing on those positives. Because as he started that, I wasn't 100% sure where he was going to go and what that might do to the rest of the sessions. So that was probably the closest thing that I would say to, and it's important to say, I go through life with a service dog, which also gives me a sense of potentially false safety. So there's also that component of things too.
Yeah. It's helpful as an educator when you're in those training spaces, something like that comes up and you're able to draw on actual content from what you've been training and people can apply it right in that moment. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. On the other side, recognizing that our experiences coming out, being LGBT, these are really unique experiences, right? Our lived experiences, sometimes really hard, tough lived experiences, kind of season us to be business owners. So I'm curious, thinking about our LGBT identities as being assets, and in particular assets as business owners, what are some traits that you see from your own lived experiences that help you be more effective as a business owner today?
I think it's perseverance, because the conversation oftentimes doesn't go the way that you expected, or you don't feel heard in the language that you've delivered. And because as LGBT, I have spent a lot of time not feeling heard, I'm able to go back and say, okay, I get that. And so now what about this? So helping people to really drive to what I've asked and asked for to get the answers I need. And that I really attribute to my LGBTQ kind of mindset, because it is I'm accustomed to not being heard. I'm also a woman. The list goes on and on and on. So it gives me that perseverance to go, that was great, but you missed this. So I think that's that tenacity component. Yeah,
tenacity, perseverance, just grit sometimes, and keep going, right? Yep. Right. So for our listeners, there's a lot of folks that are still in the 9-to-5 role. Some are in the 9-to-5 role doing the side hustle. Some have just started. For everybody, what's kind of something that you really want people to hone in on around how they can bring their authentic self to their work?
I think it goes to the idea around self-sabotage. We're brought into sometimes the hype of being a business owner and being an entrepreneur. And then there's these things that we don't know how to do that feel like fails. And as we look at them, we begin to expect our fail. And then it's that self-fulfilling prophecy. It's that self-sabotage. So I would encourage us all, and I think it's an ongoing process, I don't think it's just at the beginning, to really take inventory of what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses and where do we need to come together formally and informally. How do we create a community that makes it different? So I was in business for teens of years before I had an opportunity to come into an entrepreneurial community. That entrepreneurial community has been huge because it's what software works for you. It's the questions of, I want to go do this, but I don't really know how, or I don't know who to contact. And you can reach into your community and garner that support. And I think that we forget sometimes, particularly as entrepreneurs, that it's not all about just standing in my own little corner. And because that support was the biggest difference for me from going from the hustle to the success. So I would encourage people to look for their community, and informally at first because it's affordable, and then much more so formally, and being intentional about that formal stuff. We had the opportunity here at the NGLCC yesterday to talk about some of our types. So who am I? And who do I need to be able to move things forward in a way that is most effective? So that would be my biggest recommendation.
Yeah, I think talking about self-sabotage in the context of being authentic at work, it's maybe the assumptions that you would make. I can't be out because if I'm out, it might jeopardize my relationships. And something that I like what you were saying. In fact, when you are able, provided you're safe and you feel like your job is not going to be in jeopardy, if safety is there, job security is there, you may surprise yourself by being more authentic at the coalitions in the community that will surround you and actually uplift you. So if you're still in the 9-to-5, that's very real. Employee resource groups are great. If you've just set out on your own as an entrepreneur, connecting with your LGBT Chamber of Commerce, finding other LGBT folks that are just doing business, even if they're not involved with Chamber of Commerce. We want our communities to succeed, especially in kind of the cultural and political environment that we're in right now. So really, really great advice. And I think that's good to end on for right now. For our listeners, we're going to go to a sponsorship break, but please don't go anywhere, because when we return, we're going to learn more about Leah and how we can get in touch with her after today's conversation.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round where we'll have the chance to get to know Leah just a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn one way to stay in touch with Leah after today's conversation. So Leah, are you ready for the quickfire questions?
You bet.
All right, I love it. Okay, so in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
Full authentic alignment with who I am and what I do and how I can best serve other people.
I love that. And what's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
I would say that the planning, my daily planning, partly because if I do get derailed, I can go back to where I left off. When I have winged it, which is kind of my nature, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you are that visionary kind of boss, the squirrels in our life can definitely distract us, the flashy objects. And if you have something written down, if you just take 5 minutes out of your morning and just kind of write those top 3 things and just kind of dominate your list that way, that can definitely keep you focused. And I definitely fall trap to that. So, okay, name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
Clerical. Where does it go? How do you file it? And the minutia.
Yeah, the clerical pieces, if you can explain it to someone else, you don't want to do that. It's not a good use of your time. So very, very good advice. And there's a lot of virtual assistants out there. So if you have a little bit of a budget, it's a good investment to make. This is a newer question that I've been asking, and this is related to our current presidential administration here in the United States. A number of people who listen to the show have wanted to know if our number 45, as I call him, if he is a harm to LGBT businesses or if he's a character that is galvanizing us to work more closely together in collaboration. I'm curious about what your take is on that.
In the industry that I'm in terms of diversity, the gift of 45 is that he has brought the conversations above board. So a lot of the violence and negative language that we've heard has been here for decades. It is now out in the open and much easier to be able to confront on a one-to-one basis, on a group basis. So I'll say that in terms of my industry. What I've also seen is that as a community, it's the age-old common enemy creates a stronger force within the unitedness of that community. So I see us as LGBTQ businesses and business organizations being able to come together in strength, partly because there's strength and safety in numbers.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the Pacific Northwest and across the country. And we interviewed Gary Wood a couple episodes ago, and he's in Texas, and also Tammy Wallace, who's in Texas. And there's a lot of really, really bad legislation that's targeting LGBT folks, trans folks, and just kind of the voice of the business community as just another kind of galvanizing force to really counter some of the hate that is being written into law, or at least attempted to be written into law in these bills. So really loved your answer on that. So thank you. Can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take that first entrepreneurial leap?
Remember that you don't have to do it alone. Reach forward for those of us who are there. Yeah. We got you.
Yes, I love that. Mentorship and just finding people that are a couple of steps ahead of you, just and really lean on those folks that are willing to share. And you're definitely one of those people. So thank you. I want to thank you for being on the show. And before we end our conversation, I want to make sure that our audience knows where to find you and to learn more about your business.
So our website address is with-respect.com. No www in front. And you are welcome to email me directly, leah@with-respect.com.
I love it. And that will be included in the show notes, along with a lot of other really amazing information. You want to talk a little bit about the title of your book?
So the new book rolling out is called Mind Scaffolding, The Art of Changing Their Mind. And it's how we can design training with any content to increase our ROI.
I love that. And I know that there's a lot of folks who listen to the show who are consulting, they're doing some kind of training, not necessarily in the D&I space. And I think that all of the wisdom and knowledge that you have to share is worth the read. So definitely check that out, and we'll have that in the show notes as well. So Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Leah. So as a next step, check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversation, subscribe to the podcast, and consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.